that. That's the one thing that I've seen a lot of my friends out working in the fields gathering that as well. So that's coming up and so much more. But again, in just a few moments here, momentarily, hopefully in the next few seconds here, we're going to be joining in North Dakota Attorney General's office, Drew Wrigley. And if you need just a refresher as to what happened, the morning of July 8th, there was an officer-involved shooting at an apartment in which there was a van inside a garage, and the reports coming out that that van had gone, sped towards officers at a high rate, and that an 11-year veteran for the police department fired his gun, and Netterville died hours later at a hospital. That has been investigated by North Dakota BCI and the Attorney General, and we're going to find out in just a moment. I got a message from our KFGO reporter, Tasha Carvel, that Drew Wrigley, the Attorney General, and Police Chief Dave Zabulski are walking into that area to provide those remarks any moment now. But that's what, it's been a while, so they've gone and they've looked through all the body cam footage, I'm going to imagine, of which there was a lot, with you have the high volume of presence for police officers at that area, which was at the 1500 block of 34th Street South in that area. So that is going to be what you're going to be caught up on here in just a few moments. Again, this press conference, I believe, is taking place at the Fargo Police Department down the street here. And one of the things that happened right away was a discussion of, the immediate outrage that did take place after this and some demand for answers. In fact, let's go to that press conference that's going to be starting here in a moment or two. I'm waiting for just the signal of our producer to get that thing rolling on, and we'll be able to hear from the Attorney General in North Dakota, which is Drew Wrigley. In fact, let's go to that press conference.
Police Department. I'm going to run through a quick synopsis of this matter for context of the discussion, and then I'm going to announce a decision that I've rendered in this matter dating back to July 8th of this summer. And I'll begin there with the synopsis. It was July 8th of the summer, 2022. 8:09 a.m., regional dispatch received a call from the public, and in response to that, officers were directed to 3401 15th Avenue South here in Fargo. The call, again, I'm summarizing this. The call came in involving alleging that there were three individuals in a vehicle out there, a minivan, possibly deceased, in an apartment garage, number 305 at that address. They also were informed that there was a possible bullet hole in the windshield of the vehicle. Officer Adam O'Brien, a little over a 10-year veteran of the police department, he's also got 8 years of military police work with the North Dakota National Guard. He responded from the West Acre Station, and when he got to the scene, other officers, Officer Dirk Thiedemann and Police Officer Tyler Poole, the three of them located the vehicle in garage number 305. They observed immediately what appeared to them to be, and did in the fullness of time turn out to be, a bullet hole in that windshield. So they're getting the call of possibility of three deceased individuals in a minivan at this location. They got out there, they find three individuals who at first there didn't appear to be any movement in the vehicle, but very quickly the officers did observe that there was movement in that vehicle after they observed the bullet hole in the front windshield. By the way, it's a 2008 Kia Sedona, and the vehicle was backed into that garage facing out at the time. The officers all observed movement in the vehicle, and they had no way that they could possibly know whether the occupants had been shot, whether there were firearms in the vehicle, whether there were other weapons in the vehicle. The officers drew their weapons and quickly demanded that the occupants not move and that they show their hands. We'll be showing you the videotape of this in a little bit, and that'll become apparent. That is a matter of record with the police officer statements. It is a matter of record from the other two occupants in this vehicle, acknowledge hearing the direct commands of the officer, repeated commands of the officers, and that the driver of the vehicle, Shane Netterville, was not complying with those officers' directives. They repeatedly, as I said, directed that the individuals in the vehicle show their hands. It was loud, it was clear, and it was enunciated multiple times. Cody Dunn was one of the other passengers in the vehicle with Shane Netterville. He confirmed that he heard those commands and that Netterville was not complying with the officer's demands. He kept moving his hands up and down out of view of the officers. Derek Stanley gave a similar account when he was questioned by police about Netterville's hands movements going up and down while he was sitting inside the vehicle. Both of the other occupants in the vehicle were imploring Netterville to comply with the demands of the officer, including that he not start the vehicle. But Netterville did not comply with the lawful orders of the officer. His hands kept going in and out of view. At some point, Shane Netterville started the ignition. His hands went down. He started the ignition in the automobile and was directed to turn the vehicle. Don't start the vehicle, he was instructed. At some point, his hands go down again out of view. Again out of view, and the vehicle was turned off. The situation continued, but escalated again when Netterville's hands went down again. He starts the vehicle a second time. There's a possibility that happened 3 times, but it happened at least 2 times. During this time, officers did not have a good view, could not gain a good view of the person seated in the back seat of this vehicle. So keep in mind again that they've responded to the scene of what is possibly a 3-person homicide. Now they know there's at least some movement in the vehicle. They see what they believe to be in, which was, in fact, a bullet hole. They didn't know if it was coming out of the vehicle or going in. And you've got people inside the van and one person in the back seat who they can't get very good eyes on and see all of his movements. And the driver of the vehicle is not complying with their lawful commands. At some point, Officer O'Brien, who had been the first on the scene and had first made contact, he moved across the front of the vehicle and was standing off to the passenger side. The situation continued, and his commands were continued to be ignored. At some point, Netterville, now the vehicle's running, Shane Netterville started to move the vehicle forward. He paused momentarily and then accelerated forcefully and rapidly in the direction of Police Officer O'Brien. Officer O'Brien was forced by that move to step back rapidly away from the vehicle in hopes of avoiding being run down by the vehicle that was being operated by Shane Netterville. This was confirmed by other officers on the scene. It was also confirmed by civilian eyewitnesses with no stake in this matter whatsoever, but to relay to officers later what they had seen. The first individual is a former military, initials EC. These are quotes from what he told the police of what he was able to observe out there in broad daylight that day. The van must have had some power because he shot out of that garage like a bullet leaving a gun. If that officer had not jumped out of the way, he would have been done. He would have been a done deal. A woman who works in the area, initials NK, was being questioned later by investigators about what she observed. She said, and I quote, "Yep, I know that he was about to kill him. He was about to kill him. He was coming to hit him." At one point, officers asked them again, "Is that what you think was going to go happen?" She said, "There's no thinking about it." She said she was clear from everything she observed that the driver was going after that officer. Additionally, to that taking place, I told you about the first instance. Officer O'Brien on this side of the vehicle, as the vehicle is coming toward him. Officer Poole and Officer Thiedemann were on the other side, on the driver's side of the vehicle. In this flurry of activity, Officer Thiedemann had gone to open up the driver's side door and was going to pull Netterville out of the vehicle. That door was open then as Shane Netterville sped forward with the vehicle toward Officer O'Brien. The door came back and Poole had to extract himself from the situation or been hit by the door at the very same time. Officer O'Brien fired 1 round from his service weapon. He was carrying a .40 caliber Glock handgun that day. At the time that he discharged his weapon, he reasonably feared for his life. He reasonably feared for the lives of the other officers. The fear was twofold. Obviously, that they'd be struck by the vehicle, that they'd be killed by the vehicle, or seriously injured. The single .40 caliber round that was fired struck Shane Netterville on the right side of his chest, entered his body, and did not exit. The vehicle driven by Netterville continued up a short way, some couple hundred feet, up the driveway, down the way, crossed over 15th Avenue South, and crashed. Derek Stanley, Cody Dunn, his friends who were in the vehicle with him during this incident, fled on foot. They were later questioned by police and gave statements, some of which I've referenced already. Shane Netterville was still in the driver's seat when officers approached the crashed vehicle. Netterville was in obvious distress as Officer O'Brien began emergency medical care. He went instantly from trying to avoid this individual driving at him with his vehicle to providing medical care at the scene of the crash up the way. Once he made sure that he was not in any danger from Shane Netterville at that point, he removed Shane Netterville, placed him on the ground, and immediately applied pressure to the entry wound from the gunshot. He and Officer Tiedemann administered first aid while waiting for the emergency personnel to arrive, which they did. That was the FM ambulance. Netterville was transported to Stanford Medical Center. He was treated by medical professionals there, eventually expired from his injuries, time of death at 12:45 p.m. A short time ago, Deputy Attorney General Ness, Chief Zabolski, and I, over at the Fargo Police Department, the Assistant Chief Travis Stefanowicz was also there, a couple of other law enforcement personnel. We met with Officer Adam O'Brien to discuss the decision that I made in this matter. We met down in City Hall with relatives of Shane Netterville for a short while and shared with them the video, which we'll be sharing publicly during this conference and this afternoon. Let me talk to you about my decision in this matter. Forgive me if there's a little bit of repetition in here. Fargo police officer Adam O'Brien, he's been a police officer, as I said, for over 10 years. He has approximately 8 years of experience as a military policeman. He is an experienced peace officer. On the morning of July 8th, 2022, Officer O'Brien was at the scene just minutes after dispatch relayed a report of a possible multiple homicide. Officer O'Brien and his fellow officers, Officer Tiedemann and Poole, quickly located the minivan described in the call, saw what appeared to be the bullet hole, which heightened their concern. The vehicle was backed in, facing out. The officers had no way to know whether the apparent bullet hole was an entry or an exit hole. They had no way to initially know whether the occupants were alive or dead, whether they were armed, and whether they meant any harm to the police officers. It eventually became clear that the 3 occupants in the vehicle were alive, but the occupant in the back seat was not easily visible to law enforcement. In total, this situation presented a highly dangerous circumstance for officers and anyone in law enforcement. Shane Netterville was in the driver's seat of the vehicle, and he was not complying with the lawful commands of Fargo police, including that he show his hands. Netterville repeatedly moved his hands up into view and then back down out of view. A fact corroborated by the other occupants in the vehicle, Shane Netterville's friends who were with him that day. Shane Netterville started the engine of the vehicle, then turned it off. He restarted the vehicle, despite the orders of the officer and the pleas of the occupants inside the vehicle with him, Cody Dunn and Derek Stanley. I want to pause and mention that there's no law in this country, no reasonable prosecutor would expect that law enforcement has to wait for the answer when someone is not complying and you're in a volatile situation like this and your information involves possible homicides and guns and bullet holes and everything else. When someone is not complying, their hands are going out of view, reaching down and coming up. They're not required under the law to wait and see what comes up from underneath that non-compliance, whether there's a firearm or other weapon or something else coming out of there. But repeatedly in this instance, Fargo police showed restraint. Time and again during this incident, as Shane Netterville was elevating and escalating the conduct, officers showed restraint again and again. It was Netterville's actions that elevated a tense situation into an increasingly dangerous, highly charged standoff with law enforcement. Netterville escalated matters even further when he, in essence, transformed his vehicle into a weapon. Netterville rapidly accelerated from the garage in the direction of officers in an abrupt and a threatening manner, forcing officers to make a split-second, life-preserving decisions for themselves, for the officers around them, and for the public. A thorough and comprehensive evaluation of the facts in this case and the circumstances in this incident established that Fargo police conducted themselves professionally, bravely, and within the constructs of the law. I want to reiterate that our investigation establishes that Officer O'Brien and Officers Tiedemann and Poole gave multiple lawful orders that were necessary under the circumstances to ensure officer and public safety. Shane Netterville did not comply, and the danger to the officers was elevated. The officers instructed Netterville not to start the vehicle. He repeatedly ignored those instructions, just as he ignored the pleas of his friends in the vehicle to do the same. By starting that engine, Shane Netterville had, in essence, transformed the vehicle from a tool of obstruction to a weapon of potential destruction, presenting a clear and present danger to the officers and to the public. Still, Shane Netterville refused to relent, and moments later, he stepped on the vehicle's accelerator, he sped the vehicle menacingly in the direction of Officer Adam O'Brien, and Officer Adam O'Brien made a split-second decision to protect life and limb. That was a reasonable and appropriate decision under these circumstances. No officer wants to be put in that position, yet every officer knows that they could very well end up in such a spot each and every day. I commend the investigative work of the North Dakota BCI under the leadership of our director, Lonnie Gabrowska, who conducted a very thorough, very searching investigation of the entirety of this matter. I also commend the professionalism and the cooperation of the Fargo Police Department and its members under the leadership of Fargo's Chief of Police, Dave Zabolski. Chief, thank you. The Deputy Attorney General and I, along with the prosecutors, other prosecutors in the Attorney General's office, have fully considered all relevant facts and circumstances surrounding this incident. Our thorough investigative review has established the following: that Officer O'Brien's actions in this matter were justified. His actions were, in these circumstances, reasonable. And under the law of North Dakota, Police Officer Adam O'Brien's use of deadly force was lawful. At this point, we'll take your questions in a little bit. We're going to, at this point, show you some videos. I know the chief has some comments that he wants to share with you as well, and then we'll be glad to take your questions after the conclusion of those remarks.
Thank you, sir. Are we ready with the video? Okay, so we're going to show you.
Folks, we're going to pull away from the press conference of the Attorney General, Drew Wrigley, and Fargo Police Chief Dave Zabolski. They'll be playing this video, and Joel Heitkamp, host of News and Views, joins me in the studio here. We cannot play this video.
No, I mean, Tyler, you and Eric are making the right call. I think it's graphic. It's something that doesn't belong on air in terms of live radio. We can certainly go over it, and I'm sure you guys will.
Right.
But the Attorney General spoke, and he gave you the results of the investigation, and the public knows. And for some of us, which I would think most of us, it's not surprising. Now the debate can begin over whether or not the investigation was done fair, which It's my personal belief it was.
And I said at the get-go that the way of which this was handed off to somebody that wasn't in that immediate proximity of the officer involved was the right decision. Get the Attorney General, get the Bureau of Criminal Investigation involved. They're kind of hands-off. They're not immediately here in Fargo. I've got full confidence in this decision being the right one.
Yes, exactly. And, they waited a long time to get this report out. And I think one of the reasons they waited a long time to get this report out is because they knew they had to get it right.
Yeah. Yeah. You think July 8th is when this incident occurred, and it is now the end of August 29th, and we're getting the results of this. Very thorough. I thought Drew Wrigley, he told us 3 times about this way it unfolded, and I think that built the case that the decision's the proper one.
Yeah. So. And for those people out there who think this has been very unfair, the video and what's going to be said, I think should solve some of that issue. I would guess. I just know this: the cuss words aren't going to. They don't belong on air.
No, they will not be over here. And we were warned by Fargo PD that this was going to be graphic and that the language was going to be not appropriate for all listeners. So I tell you what, we got to get you caught up with some of this. So we'll get you the latest from Paul Jiggers of that KFGO News Center, and we'll get your thoughts. Did they get it right? 35270. You can call us at 237-5948. Afternoons Live getting rolling on here on KFGO.
KFGO News. An anti-abortion group is readying a different strategy to try to ban abortion in Minnesota.
Retiring State Representative Tim Miller from Princeburg, who now works for Pro-Life Action Ministries, says the plan is to go community by community.
We are going to be going in and attempting to pass life ordinances in communities saying no abortions in this town. So it's going to be a grassroots effort.
Hamline University analyst David Schultz says such local ordinances would be unconstitutional under the Minnesota Supreme Court decision in the Doe v. Gomez case, but suspects the group is trying to create test cases in hopes that a future state Supreme Court might overturn that ruling, just like the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. Bill Werner reporting.
North Dakota's largest cities outside the oil-producing region are awaiting millions of dollars for public projects. The state's smallest towns that have not benefited from oil production will at least get a few $100s each under a major spending initiative approved by the legislature in 2019. Fargo will get nearly $24 million under Operation Prairie Dog. Bismarck will receive $14.7 million, followed by Grand Forks at $12.7 million. West Fargo, nearly $11 million, actually $10.7 million. And Mandan, $7.4 million. The state's smallest incorporated town, Russo, with just 3 people, will get a little over $463. KFGO weather from meteorologist Tom Szymanski. Partly to mostly sunny, a windy afternoon, right around our current reading of 75. West-northwest wind 15 to 35 and gusty. Clear tonight, 50. Tomorrow, sunny and still somewhat breezy, 80. 75. Paul Jurgens, News Radio, KFGO.
We'll come back and break down some of what we witnessed in the body cam footage from Fargo PD. Rusty Alverson's got an egg report for us, and I want to get some of the latest. Boys been out there. The wheat fields, they've been active over there, Rusty.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see updated wheat harvest numbers from USDA next hour, Tyler, but visited with Reed Christofferson, Executive Director of the South Dakota Wheat Commission. He says the winter wheat harvest results went fairly well in his state, while the spring wheat yields have been a little bit spottier.
Was much more impacted by the timing of the hot condition at flowering and how that may have affected the germination, the grain fill, and then certainly it was really spotty with the rainfall, and especially as you moved north and west of up here into across the Missouri River. So as I'm hearing reports from the custom harvesters and things, it appears they're moving on up north and moving on to new regions. So really anticipate that we're probably going to hang in there in that low to mid 40s for a statewide average on spring wheat. We were in the mid 50s on the winter wheat.
Now, speaking of winter wheat in South Dakota, they'll be planting the next crop 2 to 3 weeks from now. So
it's flying by, man.
Yes, it is.
Flying by. You start throwing out the word winter already, and we're thinking about football that coming up this weekend.
Yeah.
The seasons, they are changing, Rusty.
Now, speaking of wheat, the U.S. Wheat Associates hosting an international buyers conference recently in Hawaii, and we can talk about that next hour if you'd like.
I would very much like.
Okay.
I'll save that chair for you.
Okay, thank you.
Rusty Alverson, Sarah Heinrich, you can check out more of their work if you go to kfgo.com. You just click on that agriculture tab. When we come back, your thoughts on this. If you're just tuning in, the Attorney General of North Dakota, Drew Wrigley, is joined by Fargo Police Chief Dave Zabolski, and it was July 8th, the morning of, in which there was the officer-involved shooting, and that officer, Adam O'Brien, about an 11-year vet, fired his gun, struck 28-year-old Shane Netterville, who was driving a van outside of a garage, was heading towards Officer O'Brien, did not listen to orders. We listened to the body cam footage, and we could not play that for you on these airwaves because there was some choice language, as you could about imagine, the charged environment and situation that was unfolding. But the bottom line is the shooting led to the death of this 28-year-old Shane Netterville about a day or two later in the hospital. I don't recall if it was a day or it was over the weekend. I do remember that. Instantly over that weekend, people were calling for the immediate release of that very footage we just were able to watch. I know that this will be available on the Facebook page and other avenues for the Fargo Police Department. It is riddled with some language, so be mindful of that and who you're watching that around. But those calls, you know what, they weren't answered at that time, and that was the right choice, I said then. Proper channels, the proper process, play it out here. There was, the time off for the officer involved. There was conversations had with that family. But most importantly, the investigation took place as to whether or not the use of deadly force was appropriate. The Attorney General's office, North Dakota BCI, investigated, and it's not as though they just took a couple hours, said, yep, okay. This happened July 8th. Folks, it is August 29th when they are rolling out their decision. I think the decision is the right one. I want to know from you, and I got some of those in at 35270. I'll come back to that after CBS National News. You can join the conversation at 237-5948. That is provided by Laney's as well. I'm Tyler Axis. Afternoons Live is rolling on here on a Monday afternoon. Keep it locked into KFGO Fargo. one that had, and I'm sure it continues to weigh through this, is going to be back in the line of duty. And as Zabolski, the police chief, just said, keep him in your thoughts and prayers. Keep the Nutterville family as well. Your thoughts, 35270. That's the Eye Consultants of North Dakota. Tyler, this is absolutely right. Drew is fair and an honest person. Another one, yes, I believe they got this right. An officer that has somebody driving at him to potentially kill him and had no choice but to defend himself. I do not support officers shooting people when they are running away or when they are not armed with a deadly weapon. Also do not support shooting someone that is holding a knife 5 feet or more away. The way this played out, of the repeated calls of putting your hands in the air, the repeated request to do not turn that van on, the coming up to a van that is parked in a garage backwards of 3 people that were unresponsive until police showed up with a bullet hole through the windshield, all led to this heightened sense of wanting to make sure that people were complying. And unfortunately, they did not with the repeated calls from Fargo PD, and instead decided to use that van in an erratic fashion that could have killed somebody had they struck somebody with it. And in this case, it was an officer. So we got the answers. This is something that I think a lot of people have been waiting for. And it just goes yet again to my mind of how we want things in the immediate here and now. The calls that weekend and that emotional state, which I get, it brought more passion to this, I think, in a negative sense at times, though, because there are people that don't trust necessarily law enforcement. That did heighten this as well. There were fundraisers that were going on. I mean, all of that taking place. But at the end of the day, I think we could be happy and proud of the way this did roll out. There's answers. Not everybody's probably going to be in favor of it. I think there's people out there that still think that there's an injustice that is a part of this. But ultimately, I think the decision is right. We'll get you this weather update from Too Tall Tom Schmansky. I'll set up the rest of the show here of Afternoons Live. In a little bit, we're going to be joined by Dakota Rudisil. He is a national security expert. And on Friday, the affidavit that people are demanding be released for transparency when it comes to law enforcement, well, it was redacted and put forward so you could have the weekend to digest that. I'm going to ask Dakota what he learned from that. As somebody that's had to go through that process time and time again in his professional sense of working for administrations in national security. He teaches, he's a professor down at Ohio State University. He had an op-ed that was published across the country. We'll ask him what he thinks is going to happen going forward as well. I'm Tyler Axis. Afternoons Live is getting underway here. It is Monday. KFGO time is 2:50. Let's get you that weather update from Too Tall Tom, and we'll wrap up first hour right after this here on KFGO. Other things that's newsworthy in the area that happened over the weekend that if we don't get a chance to really dive in today, we certainly will. And the truncated week that I have, I want to thank Perry Miller, Josh Swanson for taking over this very program on Thursday, Friday. Labor Day, we got some great programming for you. Don Haney from KFGO News, Al Ahmet, formerly of KFGO News, and a variety of other publications that you have seen him on, broadcasts. We had a great conversation about music. You know them as journalists. Well, you know, they are music hounds. And we got a great conversation that's going to be coming to you on Labor Day and also at KFGO.com. We recorded some of that. And I hope you enjoy that. So that's coming up this week. And we learned that not only is Kevin Cramer, a U.S. Senator, opposed to the Fufang group coming to Grand Forks, now you can add John Hoeven's name to that. So now you've got both U.S. senators here in North Dakota saying, we ought not do that. And that's put, quite frankly, in my opinion, Governor Doug Burgum in quite a position here because he has been backing this through his Department of Commerce since day one. So he's got painted into a corner in this and a variety of things. So we'll head back up to Grand Forks. So we've got our friends on the ground up there that some that have been trying to get this thing forward, others that have been opposed to it for a variety of reasons, one of which has been, quite frankly, that this company is owned from China. That seems to be the one that has really gathered around the heightened sense of urgency to have a decision here, because now you've got the national security implications because of the Air Force Base in Grand Forks. So we'll get you some more of that, but to have John Hoeven do the kind of turnaround, say, this is not something I can back any longer, I'm not confident this thing's going to get done. And there's a lot of people that are cheering that and listening to us. But just the whole process itself, maybe had we started with this, making sure that we crossed all the T's, dotted all the I's, that, this could have been avoided, because what was not avoided was the tearing apart of people in Grand Forks and the surrounding areas. I mean, people have been up in arms. You've seen and heard some of the threatening behavior, for example, that could have simply been avoided had the homework been done up front before deciding to rush behind a lectern and go and say, look what we're doing for you. Instead of sitting with you and discussing what, in fact, is the proper course of what you want. So that's going to be brought up a little bit later on. Also, some more on the saltwater spill out by Ray, North Dakota. There are technologies available that can allow us to monitor these things had we had a little willpower from the Industrial Commission. I'm going to tell you about some of that technology and, in fact, visit with some people that could prevent or at least get this to where these spills aren't taking days, weeks, months to uncover and get a real snapshot about the real impacts and not just taking words from people that, in fact, are the cause of some of that. Tyler, for the naysayers of the shooting, have them run down to their local police department, pick up an app, and help us all out. Comes in. I'll just say I'm happy to not be getting a bunch of messages saying that they got it wrong. I mean, the evidence is there. It played out. Not only did the commands from the officers go ignored, the commands from others in that van, when they were also complying and urging the driver to not drive, I mean, that played out in the body cam footage. So, I mean, the evidence backs up the decision, and I think it was the right decision, albeit a tragic moment for the community. I mean, you think about what this officer and his family's gone through, you think about what the Netterville family's gone through, and others that have been involved with this. But at the end of the day, what was revealed today after a thorough investigation, it's the right decision. When we come back to Dakota Rudisill, let's talk about the affidavit, the search that happened at Mar-a-Lago, what was uncovered, what can he read between the lines that us, or myself as an average Joe, might be missing. That's coming up after CBS and KFGO News. I'm Tyler Axis. You got a locked in after he's live at 790 AM and 104.7 FM, KFGO. There's probably some Vikings fans hoping to hear this at U.S. Bank Stadium in, about a week, 2 weeks' time as NFL season doesn't get underway. We'll talk about some of that with Couch Potato Radio host Derek Hansen. But this song, Prince's single Let's Go Crazy, released today, 1984. Then look back. Los Lobos single. La Bamba hit number one, 1987. Now, if you had to play something on repeat to drive your friend crazy, that's one of them. You just put it on repeat, put it on blast. Blues Traveler's single Hook was released in 1995. That's one you hear often right here on Afternoons Live, which is what you got locked into. When we get back from Paul Jurgens at the KFGO News Center, we're going to be joined by Dakota Rudisill, national security expert. He's with Ohio State University right now. He's gone through the whole process of making sure he hasn't taken any classified information with him when he's left that department. We're going to see what he thought about the affidavit, about the search warrant. What does he see in some of the redacted information that maybe you and I won't get because we've never lived that life? He's going to be joining us right after this here on KFGO.
KFGO News, Fargo-Moorhead 74, windy. I'm Paul Jurgens. North Dakota Attorney General Drew Wrigley has ruled that the actions of 3 Fargo police officers who were part of a deadly shooting in early July were justified. 28-year-old Shane Netterville died after he was shot in the chest by 11-year veteran officer Adam O'Brien. The 3 were in a stolen van that was in the garage of a South Fargo apartment building.
Hey, let me see your hands! Put your hands up! Put your hands up! I'm not going to tell you again. Put your hands in the air. Put your hands in the air.
Wrigley says when the officers got to the scene, there was a little movement in the van, and they thought it may have been a triple homicide. They also noticed a bullet hole in the windshield of the van.
It eventually became clear that the 3 occupants in the vehicle were alive, but the occupant in the back seat was not easily visible to law enforcement. In total, this situation presented a highly dangerous circumstance for officers and anyone in law enforcement. Shane Netterville was in the driver's seat of the vehicle, and he was not complying with the lawful commands of Fargo police, including that he show his hands.
The shooting was investigated by the State Bureau of Criminal Investigation at the request of Cass County State's Attorney Birch Burdick. BCI is under the control of Wrigley. Police Chief Dave Zabolski says the officers have been approved to return to duty early next month. The Bismarck Police Department is investigating a weekend crash that left a motorcyclist dead and his wife injured. 56-year-old Scott Culver of Mandan was driving a motorcycle west on Bismarck Expressway late Saturday night. He was being followed by his wife in her car. He was in the right lane, and an SUV driven by an 18-year-old Mandan woman was in the left lane. The SUV veered into the right lane, which caused Scott Culver to veer right, lose control of his motorcycle, and strike a light pole. Culver's wife then rear-ended the SUV with her car. Krista Culver was transported to a hospital for treatment. Scott Culver died at a hospital. A woman has died in a rollover crash in Ramsey County, North Dakota. The Highway Patrol says it happened on Highway 2 near Crary, east of Devil's Lake. That was around 10 last night. An SUV drove into the median, rolled, crossed the eastbound lanes, continued rolling, and ended up in the opposite ditch. The 29-year-old driver from Lakota was ejected and died at the scene. The juvenile female was not injured. They were not wearing seat belts. A man and 2 young children have died, and several others have been hurt in a 2-vehicle crash in a Twin Cities suburb. An SUV driven by a man and carrying a woman and 3 children crossed a median in Ham Lake and crashed into a pickup towing a trailer yesterday afternoon. The SUV driver and one of the children, a toddler, were dead at the scene. An infant was taken by air to a hospital and later died. The 3rd child was also airlifted to a hospital and was in critical condition. The woman was taken by ambulance to the hospital and is in serious condition. KFGO weather about 75 for our high this afternoon. We did hit 75 earlier this afternoon, now 74. Partly to mostly cloudy with a strong west-northwest wind. Clear 50 overnight, sunny, still breezy tomorrow, 80. Wednesday sunny, 85 the high, then sunny, breezy Thursday, 90. Again, 74, sunny. Paul Jurgens, News Radio, KFGO.
On Friday, right around noontime, the redacted affidavit was released that led to the search of Mar-a-Lago, former President Donald Trump, and some of those things of which people were calling for. They wanted transparency. Well, you're not going to get full transparency because there's an ongoing investigation. But there's questions, I think, that all around, and what the affidavit, what the FBI was searching for, and what led to the signing off from a judge to allow this. Dakota Rudisill is a friend of the show. He's got some Fargo ties, originally from this area. He is currently a professor of law at Ohio State University, but he has been in the Office of National Intelligence before. So he has lived this field for quite some time, and he joins us right now here on Afternoons Live. Dakota, I appreciate your time on a Monday. How you been?
Been well, been busy. I've been, following this like everybody else in the news, but I'm also actually teaching a course in secrecy and surveillance right now, and Donald Trump has just gifted us with another perfect controversy for, the students to explore. So it's been terrific. So
before we get into the controversy, right, and what the search revealed, what the affidavit might have provide, there's a bunch of acronyms in that affidavit, for example, that I don't understand, and I'm hoping that you can walk me through that. Tell people that may have not heard you on this program before, your background when it comes to national security and intelligence.
Yeah, well, I've been lucky enough to do some interesting work in that area. I worked inside the U.S. Intelligence Committee, the U.S. Intelligence Community, as a special assistant to the Director of National Intelligence, who's the senior intelligence officer for the U.S. government. I worked for Congress for 9 years on a committee staff, and also did legislative work where I worked on defense and intelligence for our wonderful former Senator Ken Conrad from North Dakota. I clerked for a federal court and did a number of other things. So I've been a law professor now for about the last decade, teaching and writing about this stuff.
Well, and about this stuff, that's very timely as of right now. So let's get to the subject at hand here. I appreciate you putting that foundation so people know that you got some credibility going into this. Give me your thoughts. Give me your worldview of all of it. I don't even know where to begin. You got this affidavit that goes in. You have a judge sign off on it. Instantly, there's people saying, well, this was a sham. It was a hoax. They're out to get Trump. It was they planted evidence. Then it was, well, the evidence was actually his, and he unclassified it. I mean, every excuse is being thrown out there, but I want to know, because you've lived this scenario as far as being involved with intelligence. Give me your worldview of this.
Yeah, it's really, really complex. So I'll just make just kind of a few big points about this. Number one, it's just, not how the system is supposed to work for the former president to drive off with, a massive library of dozens of boxes of presidential records. Under the law, under the Presidential Records Act, the official documents of the president, when the president leaves office, are the property of the American people. They are not the personal documents of that person who served us for 4 years as president, and they go to the National Archives. So that's one statute right there, right off the bat. Second, the person who serves as president, the second their presidency is over, is no longer the president and has no powers of the presidency. They don't even have a security clearance. And so they have no license, no privilege to possess classified information of any kind. And the documentary evidence out there from the National Archives and now from the affidavit and the unsealed warrant, it's overwhelming that there were extremely sensitive national secrets in well over 300 classified documents, over 700 pages, with the most sensitive markings you can have on a classified document: top secret, SCI, SAPs, which are special access programs, the most sensitive Pentagon programs. Some reportedly of these documents, according to some reports, concern nuclear weapons and what are called RD, restricted data. Some of it was marked FISA, F-I-S-A, which means Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which means the information concerned the advanced surveillance techniques of the United States government and potentially communications collected from Americans who are protected by the Fourth Amendment. There were HCS markings, which is basically our spies in the field. I mean, this is, those markings, we have not seen the documents, but the markings on the 700 plus pages are as sensitive as it gets. So this is completely extraordinary, and on this allegation, just immediately planted, whatever, like you are not going to get, through a federal court, a search warrant approved and have court oversight of this. I think if there's any sort of meaningful concern, there, I mean, I think, now and then in the history of the country, obviously, law enforcement or other people have engaged in planting evidence. That is overwhelmingly the exception. But I mean, just for anybody to suggest that without any sort of evidence, is ridiculous. And again, you just look at the volume of the paper, dozens of boxes, and the National Archivist talking about, hundreds of pages. I mean, this is extremely unusual and really alarming, and he's in a lot of legal peril.
I want to get to the legal side of this, but I think the question that keeps getting brought up when this subject's brought to the conversation is why. I mean, if we're talking about having, documents about spies, documents about overall highly classified information, why? I mean, have you been able to, dissect any of that? I know that there's been redactions of affidavits. We haven't seen the documents as you pointed out to, but it's one thing to possess these documents, which is of legal, concern as well. But why did he take them?
I mean, all we can do is speculate, because again, an ex-president has no right to possess presidential records or classified information. I mean, the only way that ex-presidents get access to their former papers is when they make an appointment with the National Archives, to go review documents at the archives, or sometimes they bring them to a special place, another place. With classified information, the only way that an ex-president gets additional classified briefings is when the current occupant of the White House decides as a matter of courtesy to provide a classified briefing to the ex-president. So, for example, after George W. Bush's presidency was over, in 2011, under President Obama's direction, the CIA and the military carried out the raid that killed Osama bin Laden. And President Obama, as a courtesy to George W. Bush, sent the deputy CIA director down to Texas to brief George W. Bush on the operation because, of course, Bush was president on 9/11 and presided over the start of the War on Terror. That was just a courtesy. It is that authority over classification is legally held by the president and the president's subordinates in the executive branch, not by the ex-president. So it has to be, I mean, I don't know. I mean, the speculation we've seen in the press by former National Security Advisor to Donald Trump, John Bolton, and others is that Trump just can't tell the difference between what's his and what's the public's. And that in Bolton's view, Trump just thinks like, well, anything I worked on is my personal possession. And that's just not true.
Dakota Rudisill, our guest, you mentioned the legal issues, and I'm getting a ton of messages about, and again, it's speculation, I'll get to that, but walk me through the legal side of this in just a moment, because, there's examples out there. People point to Hillary Clinton saying, well, look at the comparison here, and we got some audio from Lindsey Graham that I want to play a little bit later on. But do you got some more time for me? Because I wanted you to explain the legal side of this. I'm looking at the clock here. Do you have more time, Dakota?
You bet.
Very good. Dakota Rudisill again. He's lived this, folks. I mean, he's been part of the national intelligence, the community. When we come back, I'm going to ask about the legal concerns when it comes to the former president. What could be possible. And then Lindsey Graham, a current U.S. Senator, said if they prosecute him, there will be riots on the streets. I want to get his take on that and so much more. Your conversation, welcome at 35270. Afternoons Live is rolling on this Monday afternoon. You got locked into KFGO Fargo. He has been involved with the national intelligence community for a very long time, teaching as a law professor down at the Ohio State University. There, I had to give you one, but you're only getting one on that, Dakota. Is that part of your contract? Do you have to say it as always? Hey, I'm from the Ohio State.
I put the in there every time.
Okay, all right, I figured as much. But I want to ask the question this way: you're the person that took that volume of documents that was classified, top secret. What happens if it were Dakota Rudisill that did what is allegedly done by the president, former President Donald Trump?
I think I would never ever get out of jail. I've got an op-ed in the Forum today, and something I mentioned in there is the case of a young woman named Reality Winner. And it's an unusual name. It's kind of an ironic name considering she lost her court case. But Reality Winner was a very bright young Air Force intelligence analyst. And she made the mistake of mistaken judgment. She took a classified document out of her workplace, and she was looking at this, and she said, the people of America need to know about this classified information. So she sent it to a newspaper. And she was tracked, arrested, and she got 5 years during the Trump administration. She got 5 years in prison for one classified document. Now compare that to what's out there in the public record already about former President Trump, that he removed over 300 classified documents from the White House, totaling over 700 pages. As you think about Donald Trump's future, how is it fair for the little person to get nailed with 5 years for one document and him just to walk for hundreds, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that goes to, quite frankly, what we're about to play for you when it comes to expectations of who's off limits when it comes to accountability. And when you have a U.S. Senator and Lindsey Graham going on Fox News and saying that there's going to be riots, I want you to take a listen to this and get your response. So you've got a U.S. Senator saying there's going to be riots on the streets, didn't really seem to condone any potential violence if there, in fact, was prosecution, because, as you said, you have an example of somebody getting 5 years for one classified document, and that person worked in the intelligence community. What's your take on that?
Well, first of all, I haven't heard the rest of Senator Graham's appearance. I would hope that he said in there that political violence of any kind is completely unacceptable. He'd need to say that. We're in a really divisive moment in our country's history. Right after the president put out the vitriolic statement he did after the initial search by FBI on August 8th, where the president said, this is just a political job, by the Justice Department trying to go after Republicans, and, just all these wild accusations, calling us like some third world country or something. After he did that, right after that, one of his supporters, who was already under investigation for participating in the January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol in support of Donald Trump, that guy got an AR-15, attacked the FBI field office here in Ohio, and was killed in a gun battle with an Ohio State Highway Patrolman after posting on social media, you got to kill the feds, all that stuff. I mean, we are a very dangerous situation. And so I certainly hope that Senator Graham would say that political violence of any kind is completely unacceptable. So I think people need to underscore that. And they also need to understand that the Justice Department, for its part, is full of professionals. They're not going to act in a partisan manner. And they also cannot make decisions about prosecution on the basis of violent threats, right? I mean, if you have people who are behind a partisan figure or a party or something like that, and, there's question of application of the law to somebody, and then you have supporters of those people who say, hey, if you apply the law to this person, there's going to be violence, and then the government backs down. What is the message? right? Can you imagine having somebody running for president who knows that they can just, that they can have armed people threaten violence, and then that person can get out of legal accountability? Imagine having a person in the White House who felt like they could just call on violent people to threaten the government, and then they are not accountable to the law. I mean, it's a horrifying moment, and that's why I think it's incumbent on anybody who's participating in any of the conversations about this to say political violence of any kind is completely unacceptable.
Dakota, I know I asked for a little bit of time. Can I get a little bit more?
Yeah.
I've got KFGO News. Okay, I'm going to get you on hold, and I got people calling in to ask you some questions about, but I got to step out of the way. Paul Jenkins from the KFGO News Center to get you on the latest. We'll come back with more Dakota Rudisil right after this on KFGO.
crashed under unknown circumstances yesterday while attempting to land. A woman has died in a rollover in Ramsey County, North Dakota. Ohio Patrol says it happened on Highway 2 near Crary, east of Devil's Lake. That was around 10 last night. An SUV drove into the median, rolled, crossed the eastbound lanes, continued rolling, and ended up in the opposite ditch. The 29-year-old driver from Lakota was ejected and died at the scene. A juvenile female was not injured. They were not wearing seatbelts. The two men wanted in a shooting at Mall of America earlier this month who were later arrested in Chicago or back in Minnesota.
21-year-old Shamar Lark and 23-year-old Rashad May were booked into the jail Saturday evening. The two went on the run after that shooting outside the Nike store on Thursday, August 4th, running from the mall, taking a shuttle to a nearby hotel while getting help from three others in their escape. Those three, who police say helped them, are also facing charges of aiding and abetting. No one was hurt, but the shooting sparked a panic at the mall, with crowds rushing out as officers with rifles swept the store searching for the shooters and any victims.
Reporter Susie Jones. More than 40,000 Minnesota veterans are eligible for a post 9/11 service bonus through the state. Department of Veterans Affairs Commissioner Larry Herkey says the legislature approved grants this year for those who have served in the military over the past 20 years.
And the bonus itself is between $600 and $2,000, depending on level of participation. And to apply for it, you just have to have served during that time, started your service in Minnesota, and it just proved that you're currently a Minnesota resident.
Around 16,000 veterans have already applied for a post 9/11 service bonus through their county veteran service officer or online. Tomorrow, by the way, is Military Appreciation Day at the Minnesota State Fair. Fargo-Moorhead, partly to mostly sunny, a windy afternoon. We are at our current reading, or our forecast high of 75 now. Clear 50 overnight, a lighter west-northwest wind tomorrow. Still somewhat breezy, sunny 80 the afternoon high. Mid-80s Wednesday, sunny Thursday, sunny breezy 90. Fargo-Moorhead, partly sunny at 75. Paul Juergens, News Radio, KFGO.
I'm going to get right back to our guest. His name is Dakota Rudisill. He's a law professor at The Ohio State University. And Dakota, I appreciate you giving us some more time. I'm going to take a phone call for you. We have Cliff that has a question for you. Oh, and then Cliff, you're going to have to talk with me for a minute because I just accidentally hung up on Dakota, but I appreciate your patience. What's on your mind, Cliff? And I'll keep you on for when Dakota gets back, but what's on your mind, Cliff?
Okay, Tyler, thanks for taking my call.
Yeah,
Say either that or you can ask him the question for me if you don't get him back.
You bet.
But he was just raving about how great the FBI is, how fair and honest and unbiased, unpolitical they are. I don't know if it was Friday or Saturday, Mark Zuckerberg, over the airwaves, for all America to hear, that the FBI told Facebook, Meta, which Zuckerberg owns, or he's CEO, to suppress all information about the Hunter Biden laptop and all the Hunter Biden controversy before the 2020 election. They said not to disclose any of that. So I don't know how he can state the FBI is unpolitical. And then you add on top of that the 4 FISA warrants against the Trump campaign, or that whole Russia deal where that FISA was lied to by the FBI. So,
well, and Cliff, I got Dakota back. Dakota, are you back with us? I'm sorry. It's like I'm new at this. I accidentally hung up on you.
I'm here. I just caught the end of it. I came in when he said Hunter Biden and I heard everything after that.
Yeah, Cliff's and he's still with us. Wondering because you had alluded to the FBI, non-biased, non-political, and Cliff's taking some issue with that about Mark Zuckerberg. I think it was on the Joe Rogan Experience, if I recall, saying, "Well, look, that they pushed back on that. Don't put it out on Facebook." And Cliff brought up a couple of other things, saying, "Well, with those examples, you can't say that the FBI is unbiased." I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, let me say a few things. Sorry, are you asking me or your guest?
Yeah, no, I'm asking you, Dakota. No, Cliff was asking you. So,
all right. I'll say a couple things. So, first of all, Cliff mentioned the controversy over the FISA, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, a surveillance of a guy named Carter Page, who was a foreign policy advisor to former President Donald Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. And Mr. Page had a number of contacts with people who were associated with Russian intelligence and other people in the Russian government. When, for the very first time ever, and I'm somebody I write extensively about secrecy and surveillance. I can tell you, it's the first time that a court-issued surveillance order under FISA was ever published, and that was the one in the Carter Page investigation because of the public interest in it. What we learned was that there was a good amount of shoddy work in there by FBI agents and by DOJ. There was a lot of evidence in there that was of high quality, but there was a lot of sloppiness. And so that definitely was a black mark on the FBI. The Inspector General has looked into that. And, a number of people who follow this stuff, I think have come to kind of the same conclusion that I have, which is that the secrecy of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance process and all the proceedings of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act court, the FISA court, they're all secret, they're all classified, and that's because, FISA was designed to monitor hostile foreign powers and terrorists, and it deals in highly classified surveillance capabilities because of that, the whole thing's classified. And one of the problems with secrecy is, be it national security secrecy or just, think about your local, town government or whatever it is. But one of the inevitable hazards with secrecy is that people will feel like they're not being monitored, and they will cut corners, and they will get sloppy. And it looks like that is what happened here in this one, and also in a number of other FISA surveillance warrants. DOJ and FBI, I believe, are taking this seriously and are working, I think, hard to change their processes to, prevent the type of sloppiness that was evident there. So, I think that certainly was an issue. What the Inspector General who looked into that found is that there was no evidence that there was some sort of partisan agenda through the FBI or DOJ, that there was some sort of kind of like broad political conspiracy against Donald Trump, which was, his allegation. And I know that's certainly pumped out by a lot of right-wing media. Unfortunately, one of the FBI agents who was involved with this sent a text to another FBI agent that expressed, his, I guess, just, unhappiness with Donald Trump, and he wasn't a fan of him and whatever. But the Inspector General looked into this and found, there's lack of kind of a political conspiracy. And I would just say, as somebody who's worked in the intelligence community and worked with people in law enforcement, the vast majority of people are just professionally doing their jobs. And I don't think that there's some sort of vast conspiracy against Donald Trump. So I just think that that's not, I think that's the wrong way to think about this entire scandal about Donald Trump walking off with hundreds and hundreds of highly classified documents.
Cliff, I thank you for the phone call. I want to ask is that's going to go back to Hillary Clinton, right? People say about FBI being politically charged. I think in 2016, Democrats were shouting about the FBI basically giving Donald Trump the election because just a week before the election, James Comey goes out and has a press conference. But on the other side, and the other comparison you're seeing a lot of in this, Dakota, is, well, look, there's going to be a double standard because they did nothing about Hillary Clinton in the emails. So how can they do this against Donald Trump? Because they're going to claim that there's a precedent set by nothing being held to account for Hillary Clinton. Your thoughts, your reaction?
Yeah, absolutely. So one certainly has to talk about the Hillary Clinton example because she was a presidential candidate, and Trump obviously is somebody who ran and won and probably wants to run again. So in the case of Hillary Clinton, so when she was Secretary of State, she used a non-government email system to do a lot of official business, and that is not appropriate. It's a violation of the regs. Unfortunately, her predecessor, Colin Powell, when he was Secretary of State in the George W. Bush administration, used a Yahoo account. And there have been a number of other senior people, political appointees at a number of departments, including in the Trump White House, who also used non-government information systems to do official work. Two things about the Clinton case I think got her in particular trouble. One was that she had this server in her house that was running that email program on, which is really unusual. Legally, it's not that different than just if you're using your Gmail or Snapchat or Yahoo or whatever, but that was just kind of strange and dumb. The other thing was that classified information seeped into a number of these unclassified communications that she was doing. That is a definite problem. I will say, having worked in this world, it is all too common, especially for the senior political appointees, to get sloppy. They're moving fast. That things are very busy, and they're not clear about what's classified and what's not, and that got in there, and that isn't great. So the FBI did a thorough investigation of this, as you mentioned, and the conclusion of the FBI director at the time, Jim Comey, who'd been George W. Bush's deputy attorney general, by the way, Comey's conclusion was that Clinton had been very, very sloppy, and if she were a normal employee, she would have faced administrative discipline, like a letter in her file, being fired, something like that. However, her carelessness did not meet the long-established standard for prosecution with regard to classified information, which is willful and knowing unauthorized mishandling and unauthorized removal of classified information from where it should be stored. That is the standard. You can go read the statutes. You can look at the precedent. So that is the key thing that distinguishes the Clinton case, where she was reckless. But in Trump's case, he was told over and over by the National Archives and by the Department of Justice over a year and a half that he had information that was very sensitive and that he was not authorized to possess, and he needed to return it. And he did not fully comply. So it was willful and knowing for Donald Trump, based on what we know, and that could potentially meet the standard for prosecution.
Well, that kind of leads into my final question for you, and I've taken much more of your time than what I asked. What's the next step? What's the road ahead look like? Or what are the potential? You mentioned potential prosecution. We heard from Lindsey Graham if that happens. In comparison to Hillary Clinton, which is why I asked, saying that, look, they set a standard, and if they have a different standard for Donald Trump, there's going to be riots on the streets. You got the crystal ball right now, Dakota. What's the road ahead look like?
Well, the stage of the investigation right now is that the Justice Department and the FBI are looking through the dozens of boxes of information that they seized pursuant to the court-issued warrant on August 8th. And they're also doing a damage assessment. The intelligence community is doing an assessment now that they kind of understand the classified information that's in the documents. Potentially who could have gotten access to that? Were there classified sources and methods, spies in the field, other things that might be endangered by this? With regard to potential prosecution, the FBI and DOJ, the Justice Department, are going to look at this and see where the facts take them. And they'll have to make some sort of decision about, whether they think that the people responsible for this are, is Donald Trump himself, or is it his aides? Is it his lawyers? Who is it, right? So we could potentially see charges against, one person, number of people, or nobody. And they also need to decide, whether they're going to go after what's obviously going to be Trump's main defense, which is that he classified all this stuff in bulk. So, sorry, that he declassified all this stuff in bulk while he was president. Trump's saying that. So far, there's no evidence of any kind except Trump's say-so that he issued that sort of bulk declassification order. And if no evidence turns up, no documentary evidence, nothing to corroborate Trump's claim, I think that, the Justice Department probably would be more confident in going ahead. If it does turn out that there was a memo that Trump signed to the White House staff, if there was a classified memo from his national security advisor to the CIA, the Pentagon, the national security staff saying, hey, when Trump walks the document over to the residents at the end of the day, that means the information's declassified. If they find that, Trump will have a really good defense that he tried to declassify it. But so far, Trump, Kash Patel, all these people, they haven't even claimed that there's a documentary record out there that Trump issued, which was a completely extraordinary standing order that when he walked from the Oval Office to the residence, that he was declassifying documents every time he did that. I mean, that's just, his own national security advisor, John Bolton, who was there, said he saw no evidence of such a standing order. And John Bolton says that Trump's lying. So, I think DOJ is going to be looking, is there a documentary record of Trump having issued that order? And if not, I think that makes things worse for Trump.
Dakota, as always, I appreciate your time and your insight and your experience here, as do a lot of the listening audience here, according to our text clip at 35270. Let's do this again soon, all right? We'll be following along, and you just answer when we call, all right?
You bet. Anytime.
Right.
Take care.
All right, yeah, you do the same. Dakota Rudisil, law professor at Ohio State University, also a formerly national intelligence individual. I guess I should probably get the official. He was the special assistant to the office of the director of national intelligence for a number of years. I got to get you caught up with CBS National News. Rusty Alverson will get us the latest egg. I'll come back to your thoughts right after this here on KFGO. Alverson promises he'll be back in an hour, and well, it's a little over. I appreciate you being a little flexible.
Oh, no
Kept my
problem.
guess a lot longer than what I asked of Dakota.
Good guess.
Yeah, a lot of response in the text club 35270. Well, what's the latest here? I know you're working on some wheat numbers.
Well, let me put on my cheaters here.
Okay,
The numbers are small.
Take your time. I got 4 minutes.
Well, we updated the wheat harvest numbers, USDA. North Dakota spring wheat harvest, 82% complete. That compares to the 5-year average of 66%. So ahead of the game there. South Dakota, 92% complete, pretty much in line with the 5-year average. Spring wheat in Minnesota, 44% harvested. That's a bit behind, 78% for the 5-year average. But speaking of wheat, the U.S. Wheat Associates recently hosting an international buyers forum in Hawaii, and we visited with Executive Director of the South Dakota Wheat Commission, Reed Christopherson, and he was on hand, and he said that geopolitical concerns were a common topic of conversations.
Certainly, as we look at every region of the world and where those exports and what their harvest conditions were this year, and what's available, and how does U.S. wheat fit into that? And of course, we firmly believe that we still have the highest milling value wheat in the world, and that it should be the first wheat of choice for our millers.
Now, U.S. Wheat Associates has offices in 14 different countries, Tyler, and folks in Hawaii coming from countries and places like South Africa, Nigeria, Rotterdam, Hong Kong, Taipei, the Philippines, Morocco, South America, and Mexico City, an invite-only conference. And, I was checking the mailbox.
Yeah, see, got lost?
Yeah.
You got lost on the way?
I'm still looking for it.
Here's going to be a silly question, because I know nothing. I've never been to Hawaii. But I know people,
Nor have I.
You don't go to Florida this time of year. It's hot, it's humid.
I can vouch for that, yeah.
Is that it's not the case at all in Hawaii? Is it a dry heat?
From what Reed told me, it's kind of the same weather all the time.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah, perfect. The invite would have been nice to receive as well.
Still looking.
Yeah, well.
They hold it every 3 years, so I'm holding out for 2025.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I appreciate the check-in from right here in Fargo, North Dakota. Rusty.
Absolutely.
You can't wait till tomorrow for more updates. KFGO.com. You can find his work, Sarah Heinrich. You just click on that agriculture tab. Here's what's coming up. We have got a variety of text messages, and I'm going to get to these. Your thoughts. I know that we had people on hold, didn't want to hang on any longer. I apologize. I had limited time with Dakota, and I took more of that time than what I asked. But there's a lot of response here. And people throwing at you, hey, Cliff, are you part of a cult comes in. There's other people talking about Hillary Clinton also testified in front of a committee for 11 hours. Tyler Q, what about Hillary and what about Hunter calls and texts? Well, you got a couple of those, and some of them didn't want to hang on. I tell you what, I got to get you caught up with CBS Nationals. I'll try. Some of these are quite lengthy. They're broken up, and my thoughts on this text club, the way of which it comes in, all broken up, fragmented. So I will try to piece them together, share with you what your fellow listeners are thinking about the whole situation. And then we'll have Derek Hansen, host of Couch Potato Radio. It is football week upon us. We'll talk about that, Twins, and so much more. In the final hour of Afternoons Live this Monday afternoon's rolling on right here on KFGO.
we stay together? Can we stay together? I'm a fool to love for you. 내 맘을 네 곁에 forever. 네 곁에 forever. 널 만나 내 마음이 Can we stay together? 내게 I'm ready. I'm ready.
We are looking at how to pronounce the name of this Italian rock band from Rome, originally. How do you say it? Måneskin. Måneskin.
Struggling a little bit, and some of the call centers have been pretty overwhelmed. But, hopefully next session we'll get that money. But again, people should feel very comfortable calling 988.
Aber Holden notes that anyone with a Minnesota area code who calls 988 will be connected with a mental health resource person in Minnesota, regardless of their location. KFGO weather, a clearing night, 50 for the overnight low, and winds will diminish. Sunny, still a bit breezy tomorrow, 80 the high. Then sunny Wednesday, KFGO meteorologist Tom Shemansky's calling for 85, and we expect 90 sunny, breezy Thursday. Mostly cloudy, 75 degrees. Paul Jurgens, News Radio, KFGO.
Derek Hansen joins me in studio. You want to go through some of the text messages with me?
Sure.
We had Dakota Rudisil on. He's national security, national intelligence. He's been through the ringer here, and he was just sharing his perspective on the search that happened in Mar-a-Lago. Not everybody's happy about that. Some people responding, and I shared one that because he's an expert is why I've had him on and invite him back when it comes to national intelligence. Tyler, the facts are right in front of us. Trump stole the highly classified documents, he is so guilty. I will never understand or comprehend how his cult doesn't care, still supports him. I wish I wasn't part of this sick research study of how a cult works. I can tell you, for everybody saying, well, geez, I don't ever want to have to talk about Donald Trump again unless he's running for office. I mean, this isn't always fun talking about this either, but it's certainly, I think, worthy of the national attention that it's getting. Tyler, I truly believe that the documents are part of his plan to regain control of the United States. He was and is still planning to take control in whatever way and with whatever means possible. Tyler, does Dakota know who he's defaming? Almighty Trump. Seriously, thank you for your knowledge on this issue. This one, Brooke, you love this text club, right?
Yeah, always.
It's so fluent in how it provides us all the information we need in a linear way. So I'm going to bear with me. I'm reading this, and I tried to piece it together in a way that makes sense to me, but it's not making sense in the way of which it came in. During the presidency of Donald Trump, he strongly encouraged the development of stronger laws to support tighter security. This came about after Trump successfully pointed out Hillary Clinton had been loose with her security measures and secret documents. After that, Trump requested that the Russian government and their security officers unveil the secret documents that they, meaning Russia, were able to uncover from Hillary. They did. This is where I get lost. They did another set of laws for big shots and fat cats like Trump, who is guilty as a cat with feathers on his chin. Now under Trump's own laws for tighter security and various new laws, do we suddenly have two sets of laws? Okay, that's where the other. See there. I mean, I think adding that in because with this tracing back to Hillary Clinton, right, and her stupid, idiotic approach with the server at home, with the use of the private email.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can use that as the starting point that was, pounded day after day, but her emails, lock her up. And that did force change in what is expected of national security and classified information. And now we can walk that through this course to where we are right now.
When you watch, remember watching Forrest Gump with the ping pong, how good he was at ping pong? Yeah. That's what it's like when you have Democrats going after Trump and then Trumpers going after Democrats on whataboutism with Hillary and Trump. It goes back that fast.
That's a great analogy.
I mean, it is amazing how quick we are to do that. Because I think the thing is most Democrats, they don't want to even hear about Hillary anymore.
Oh,
wouldn't you agree?
Yes, I do.
I mean, so that is the worst comeback ever right now. It's like, oh, what about Hillary? Oh, God, no, stop. No more. And I think we're getting to the point that we could say the same thing about Trump. I mean, in 1988, Pour Some Sugar on Me was a really hot song. But after the first 10,000 times, I was really tired of it. That's kind of the same thing with Trump on any of this. And my worst fear on all of this is just now we're going to make him out to be a martyr and he's going to be bigger than ever.
Well, you're already seeing that shift in the numbers. I mean, once the search was conducted, polling showed in the Republican Party, more people were inclined to want him to be still the leader of that party.
Yeah,
they rallied around the flag. It just was the Trump flag.
Well, we said in 2016, if he wins, that is the Republican Party now, and it's coming to fruition. And I think almost, Liz Cheney. I'm not a big fan of the Cheneys and that first
made that known.
Very much, but I think she just realized she's getting. I think more than anything, what's her angle here? She was abandoning ship. Mm-hmm. I think that's what she's doing more than anything else. I don't think she's necessarily going to go and become a Democrat, but I just think that and it's almost like they're going to burn everything behind them now and almost like try to start their own thing. These neocon Republicans.
There is a growing sense that I get even from listeners that there's interest in that third party. Could a third party now more than ever be violent? Well, that has. That bell's been rung quite a few times over the last, I would say, decade, right? It's time for a third party.
Well, and I think what they're going to try to do, I think with the Cheney type of wing of the Republican Party to do is try to start their own, and they're going to try to they created a monster and they didn't know what to do with it. Because during the Bush-Cheney administration, there was a lot more. We always talked about Trump dog whistling. Well, as time went on, it wasn't even dog whistling anymore. It was carnival barking. And I think during the Bush administration, there was a lot of quiet type of dog whistling for some racism things and a few other things like that, and they would, because they were the first to feed off many of these red meat issues, like the you can watch Fox News, the war against Christmas, the whole thing with
we still fighting that war
every year about it should be coming up right after Halloween. It's going to start again, and and those type of things, and you could see it coming, and I think that's kind of the sad part of it, where it's not talking about policies, real policies, because they don't bring that to the table. And I think, and Democrats they have their own worst enemy in trying to start these things too. We talked about the whole school board thing,
I know.
That's where these two sides just can't figure that out. Let's talk about actual policies here. And I really think that the Bush-Cheney administration led to Trumpism, whether they knew it or not. And that really, because the undertone was already there.
Well, and I think what propelled that, there you go, bringing race into this, was when Barack Obama did get elected.
No question.
Because, I mean, the Tea Party rallies that happened out there.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw those posters. I saw them.
No question.
And the Tea Party, then you had the Freedom Caucus that went in saying, we're really fiscally conservative is what we're about.
Yep.
Those voices are being drowned out right now.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah, and but then I get messages like, Tyler, I'm a Republican. Give me Liz Cheney for president. I'll be curious, the divide. I mean, you see it right here in North Dakota. You got Rick Becker versus John Hoeven. There is a divide amongst the Republican Party, and there is that on the Democratic side as well. Because people will say, "Oh, Tyler, you're just like AOC, right? You support her." No, if you're running here, there's not a chance. But if in fact what Liz Cheney, and this is where, because I know your thoughts on Liz Cheney, and I've said into this microphone multiple times that for this election coming up in the next presidential election, a thing that you never thought was going to be a top priority for people voting is defending democracy, and she's able to picture and paint herself being that person doing that.
Yeah.
And that does weigh with me.
Well, I think the biggest thing is I don't think she minds burning the Trump Republican Party down, but it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be very, very intriguing what the Democrats do, because they cannot go too far left now, as you said, for if Biden doesn't run, where they're going to go. And that's the thing. And I think that's the wedge that she might be looking at. I mean, that Cheney neocon type of party that want that back, if they find their angle and split both parties, that could be interesting. We saw it with Jesse Ventura in 1998.
Ventura. Tyler is Dakota. If that Dakota is an expert on something other than leftism, then my dog is a lawyer. What a joke. He teaches law at The Ohio State University. Tyler, the children who support Trump only heard that Dakota worked for a Democrat. Their minds were instantly made up, comes in. Well, I think the other one just proved that. Tyler, what about the Facebook Zuckerberg FBI Biden story? And we had Cliff call in and ask that. So have you followed along with this, Derek? So Mark Zuckerberg, I think was on the Joe Rogan Experience.
Oh, yes.
Right before Aaron Rodgers. And we'll get to that a little bit later on. And made the claim, and no reason to doubt why he would say this, but it goes on to say that the FBI wanted Facebook to diminish the Hunter Biden laptop story. So, I mean, if there's some legs to that, I mean, that's something that should absolutely be looked into as well. See, now, here's what I think separates some people texting in versus myself and probably you. If there is something there, by all means, go investigate it.
Yeah.
Do it. But I don't think it's a big conspiracy if you're looking into it.
Well, here's what I'll say, too, on this, and I'll be quite honest with this. The criticism, I have a journalism degree. I think a lot of what's happened the past few years since Trumpism as Trump has been president has been quite sad as far as actual journalism. Mm-hmm. And I think it is the job of the journalists, no matter what their political leanings are, secretly, is to go after this story. That is a huge deal, because you're not talking about some conspiracy theorist guy. You're talking about the guy who's got one of the, if not the biggest social media platforms in the world saying this. That's huge.
Yeah. And by all means, then go do it. I'm not for thinking, well, geez, if they're looking at a Democrat, then this is all, it's a hoax, it's a conspiracy they're out to get, it's all partisanship. That's what I think separates a lot of people
for sure.
Now. Tyler, I believe anything you say on the Joe Rogan Experience is the same as being under oath. Which comes in with a LOL. They're making this is a tongue in cheek.
Yeah, that's true. But I think it's a little different with Zuckerberg, because you have to understand that from one side of it, he's been accused of being in on all the stifling of anything.
You're silencing conservatives.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
so you can't have it both ways. If he's coming out and saying something like that about Hunter Biden, I mean, I think that's newsworthy of what we've dealt with for almost 3 years of this type of talk.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that's really important that someone's got to look into that.
Yeah, and I hope they are. That's that's
Right.
the difference here. I got to get out of the way for a moment. You stick around. I want to talk a little bit about sports today, okay?
Sounds good.
Derek Hansen's host of Couch Potato Radio. I'm Tyler Raxton's host of Afternoons Live, which is what you got locked into right here on KFGO. Cleveland lost, so the Twins find themselves, 2 games back of Cleveland as the Central rolls on. We play Cleveland, I think, 8 times before the end of the season, so Central's still very much in reach.
Yeah, it helps when you sweep and they drop a few games. I mean, that certainly is the case, and they have a chance to Dylan Bundy on the hill tonight against the Boston Red Sox. 6 o'clock's the pregame show. It's good to see that. Jake Cave of all people, the big hero of the game. And so, I mean, that's great to see. I mean, they've been injured with outfielders all season long. I say that Garlick, he was like a key part of what they were trying to do. So if Cave can do it, bring them a little love here and help them out, that certainly would be a nice thing to have. So, yeah, they need to make hay. They got the Yankees coming up next week and some tough games here the next few weeks. So it's really going to be huge. And yeah, it's all going to come down. It reminds me of 2019 a little bit. All those games against Cleveland in September help wrap up the American League Central title for the Twins, and we'll see if they can recapture that magic.
Yeah, that'd be very good. Injuries kind of hitting at a wrong time.
There's no question.
Every team in the league has had to deal with injuries, but it seems to have caught up, I think, with the Twins, and hopefully they overcome. Speaking of injuries, did you see that the Ravens mascot tore his ACL?
You're kidding me.
And was carted off the field?
That is horrible.
He kept his helmet. He kept the mask on.
Oh,
that's dedication to the art.
That had to be tough. It's speaking of ACLs and the Minnesota Vikings,
Yes,
BZ Johnson, it's too bad. The other leg now for him. A promising kid out of Colorado State has done a lot of nice things, and you're hoping he'd be the fourth wide receiver to really solidify things. And, they did actually cut Myron Mitchell today, which surprised me. I don't know if he'll get a shot now because of that. But, boy, there is a lot of hope, though. We had 3 deep in 1998 with Chris Carter, Jake Reed, and Randy Moss. And I saw 3 deep 2.0 come out with KJ Osborne, Thielen, and Justin Jefferson.
Boy.
That's pretty lofty.
Is that on a T-shirt somewhere?
I haven't seen it on a T-shirt yet, but
wait till you're down at a U.S. Bank.
You never know. That's so. But there's a lot of hope for those guys. I think when I was down at practice, Kirk Cousins hooked up with KJ Osborne a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot, especially in that scrimmage on a couple Thursdays ago. So hopefully that's the case again.
I'm ready for it. I'm ready for football, man. It's football week. In fact, I want to talk about UND going to Nebraska this weekend. You got NDSU opening up at home versus Drake. I'll be at that game. Thursday night football, Amazon Prime only. And I want to underscore that because I know there's a lot of people listening right now that do not have Amazon Prime. That means you will not have the season opener because it's on Thursday night, or is this on
No, this will be on the network. I think this one's on MSCB and NBC. But
well, allow me to retract. But any other Thursday night football you will not get unless you've got Amazon Prime. We'll talk about that and so much more coming up after KFGO News. We'll check you in with Paul Jurgens. There's another mascot story I want to dive into. It's the Atlanta Braves mascot throwing kids down during a football scrimmage. If you haven't seen that, I'll reshare that on my Facebook and on Twitter. I'm Tyler Exodus. Eric Johnson's our producer. Derek Hansen, my guest. You got a locked into KFGO Fargo.
KFGO News, mostly cloudy, windy, 75. I'm Paul Jurgens. Attorney General Drew Wrigley says a Fargo police officer was justified in shooting and killing a man in an apartment complex in July. Wrigley says Officer Adam O'Brien fired at 28-year-old Shane Netterville after Netterville ignored police commands and sped out of a garage in a stolen van, narrowly avoiding officers. Netterville suffered a chest wound and died at a hospital several hours later. Wrigley and Police Chief Dave Zabolski showed dash and body cam video this afternoon. O'Brien was placed on paid administrative leave while the case was reviewed. O'Brien will return to duty on September 7th. Fargo police are still looking for 31-year-old Robin Heinonen. He's wanted in a terrorizing case, but they say Heinonen is considered armed and dangerous and he shouldn't be approached. He's Native American, about 5'10", and weighs 180 pounds. He's also known to wear glasses and has distinct tattoos of the letters N and M on the right side of his face. Heinonen was last seen August 22nd, around the 42nd 100 block of 9th Avenue South. North Dakota's Department of Transportation director says it's all about preventing traffic fatalities. Bill Pano says his department is using $4 million from the federal government to install reflective posts called delineators along about half of the state highways. Some farmers and ag groups contend that the posts could damage equipment while they cut hay along road ditches. Pano says the concerns will be taken into consideration.
We believe, what our data shows and what the experience of other states has been, is we'll save about 15 lives from the installation of these. We see about 30 people die every year in the state from runoffs on this type of road. And we believe that about half of them are at night. And so we believe that we will see about a reduction of 15, which is 15 lives saved.
Pano says studies have shown that delineators placed along curves or other locations with a high number of crashes on two-lane roads, again, could save the state at least 15 lives every year. 75, this is KFGO News. Mostly cloudy, 75. This is KFGO News. A woman has died on a rollover in Ramsey County, North Dakota. The State Patrol says that crash happened on Highway 2 near Prairie, east of Devil's Lake, around 10 last night. The SUV drove into the median, rolled, crossed the eastbound lanes, continued rolling, and ended up in the opposite ditch. The 29-year-old driver from Lakota was ejected and died at the scene. A juvenile female passenger was not hurt. They were not wearing seat belts. The investigation continues into a head-on crash in Ham Lake, Minnesota, that killed 3 people over the weekend. Reporter Al Schock.
It happened just after 3 yesterday afternoon on Bunker Lake Road Northwest near Butternut Street. An SUV veered across the median, colliding with an oncoming pickup truck. There were 5 people inside the SUV. The driver and a toddler were killed. An infant passenger in the SUV was taken to the hospital and later died. 2 other passengers were also injured, including a 3rd child who was in critical condition and an adult woman who was in serious condition. 2 men in the pickup truck suffered just minor injuries. IDs of the victims have not been released.
An anti-abortion group is readying to a different strategy to try to ban abortion in Minnesota. Retiring State Representative Tim Miller, who now works for Pro-Life Action Ministries, says the plan is to go community by community. Miller says they're going to be attempting to pass anti-abortion ordinances in cities, saying no abortions in this town, which he is calling a grassroots effort. Hamline University analyst David Schultz, though, says such local ordinances would be unconstitutional under the Minnesota Supreme Court decision in the Doe v. Gomez case. KFGO weather from meteorologist Tom Shemansky. A clearing sky, diminishing wind, and Fargo-Moorhead about 50 for the overnight low. West-northwest wind tomorrow, a bit strong, 80, sunny. 85 sunny Wednesday. Thursday, a high near 90 in the afternoon, sunny, breezy. Also Friday, sunshine, 82. 75, Paul Juergens, News Radio, KFGO.
College football in the area is getting underway this week. UND going to be at Nebraska. Yeah, that Nebraska taking on the Cornhuskers. 2:30 game. NDSU hosting Drake. 2:30. I'm going to say it. You can agree or disagree at 35270. I do not like 2:30 afternoon games. 11 a.m., noon, fine. Night games, all right. The afternoon game at 2:30 does not sit well with me because here's why. You go up, you tailgate. Go to the game. Then by the time you're done, it's kind of in that little after dinner. So do we go have dinner, supper somewhere? It just consumes sort of the whole day. And I love the environment. I love watching it. But at 2:30, can we have an 11? Can we have it set at 11 a.m.?
And they don't do a lot of 11 a.m. games up at the old Fargo Dome anymore, do they?
No,
it's
I
a
think
lot
dang
of 2:30.
near all of them. So we got 2:30, 2:32. Okay, then a Friday night game for like the semifinals if we make that. Give me 11 a.m. I'll ask. So you're in favor of the 11 a.m.
Yeah,
Or,
yeah,
noon.
I like
even 12. Give me 12.
I think that's a perfect football time.
Yeah, 2:30 just seems like it ruins part of the day. Derek Gantz is back in studio. You're a Gophers fan. I mean, you got the 11 o'clock games. That's the proper time to play college ball, right?
I don't mind 2 o'clock. I don't mind 1 o'clock. I don't mind noon. 11 o'clock seems like, wow, we just got up. Of course, especially in my younger days.
Yeah, but then you could get up and start the tailgate immediately, whatever time
That's like
was.
the perfect time in that era of your life.
You know, I watch so many games, though. I don't go to games like you do. So I can understand where, if you wanted to go and partake early, had something on the grill and have a couple cool ones before you went in. I could see where you wanted to maybe get it done earlier, get the game over with, and then have fun the rest of the night. I understand that. For me,
or do chores or something. Let's be real.
No one's doing chores after a football game.
I had to say, well, it's not all about having fun after the game. Some guys got to do some things.
Yeah, for me,
what Tyler wants is time for the mid-afternoon nap so that he can go back out in the evening.
I'm not a nap guy. I'm no nap guy.
I am.
Yeah, okay. To each their own.
But if there's a really good slate of games. See, I'm a multiple TV guy. Watch, as you know, or listen. When it's September, I like to be on my pontoon. Listen to Jack Michaels call the Nebraska game this Saturday here on KFGO. That's what I really like doing if it's nice enough. But no, to your point, I can understand where if you want to get going. But I can imagine living on the West Coast and your team is going out to the Central East time zone, and you have to. I mean, the
Arizona game is going to be 10 p.m. our time.
Yeah, that's rough. Well, even the Gophers on Jack 101.9 FM, kickoff isn't until 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
That's late for, in college football is usually 4 hours long.
And now with the upcoming expansion of the Big Ten, what happens when a team like Rutgers goes out to California to play SC?
See, now that's when you're going to need your afternoon nap. So you can get up and actually watch the game.
When they add 4 more teams from the Pac-12 and just totally dismantle that conference, it'll be it'll be more sectioned off. I think it'll be like 10-team divisions, and we'll see how it goes.
2:30 p.m. kickoff. Thoughts and prayers comes in with LOL. Yeah, there are.
It's a very first world complaint.
It absolutely is, but I have to get it off my chest. 2:30 kickoffs is the wrong time. Give me 11. Give me noon. That's what I prefer. But I'll show up and I'll have fun either way. I'm just saying if it would be more ideal for at least me, you can let me know your thoughts at 3-5.
It's all about you.
I mean, Bison fans have had it pretty rough over the last decade.
I know.
I
feel bad for them. I mean, I don't know how they deal with stuff. I mean,
you guys done? You done? You get it off your chest? I got more time.
I'll catch the Paul Feinbaum show every once in a while. And if you want to talk about any parallel of the Bama and Bison fans, they are it, man. I mean, they only won by 3 touchdowns. What's going on with them? And then the other side of it's, the games are too boring. You can't win.
I'm just saying the games are too dang late is all I'm saying. Here's a prediction for you. UND gets by Nebraska. Frost is gone. Prediction.
Well, that would be cool. Do you think Scott Frost is thinking, I should have stayed at Central Florida? Yeah. That would have been a much better deal. I was growing something there.
What other program besides Nebraska has been, at the top to where they're kind of a joke?
Miami.
Yeah,
that's a good addition.
Yeah, but that's only because Miami couldn't. The only time they ever won is when they cheated.
Or Florida State's another example.
They dropped too, and I was as a fan. There's no doubt. Jimbo, they won a title in 2013. That's hard to believe. That's almost 10 years ago now. My goodness.
Somebody's trying to save me at 2:30. You can have beer now, Tyler.
Yeah, exactly.
So you don't have to front load the beer.
Right.
At the tailgate.
Exactly. You can go in and actually buy a beer.
Only heathens tailgate before noon. Oh, you would.
Well,
you would think, okay, pray for me then. Pray for me.
Well, we do a lot.
Let's get you caught up with CBS News. We'll continue this riveting conversation of the appropriate time of when college football is supposed to get underway and how I'll be saved during football season. Stick around. You got it locked into Afternoons Live right here on KFGO. Operation Prairie Dog here in North Dakota, something that's finally going to be able to be utilized. All the promises of, hey, that oil money, yeah, we've taken care of the West. It's time for the rest of you to get your fair share. If you're listening to me at KFGO.com and you're from the West, those are their words, not mine. But they have it as a formula that the legislature set up in 2019. Fargo will get nearly $24 million. Bismarck will receive about $15 million. Grand Forks, about $13 million. West Fargo, almost $11 million. Mandan, $7 million. But it's based on some population numbers. So the small town of Russo, which has just 3 people, you're going to get $463.37. Good. Don't spend it all at one place. I don't know what. Just throw a party.
Congratulations.
Yeah, $463.
You buy a lot of Busch Light with that, Tyler. I mean,
yeah, you can get the pallets as we're talking about.
Yeah, why not?
And you can buy it right here where it's a little bit cheaper than probably it would be in a small town like Russo, which I assume does not have a cafe, a bar, or a church.
They'd have
or
to
the post
get
office.
3 people going, so, keep it going.
Well, but you throw in a party with Busch Light, you're going to have people from all around.
Oh, don't you know it?
$463, it's on us. Just back the
People
tailgate
come
up.
from all over.
Yeah, probably. It used to be that way.
Yeah,
you have
for
a
sure.
couple pallets on fire. If you
see ya.
Yeah, unless you get it in the grove of trees, which was always what you were looking for to
That's
try
true.
to muffle some of those open flames.
Yeah, well, you don't want to start a fire for everyone to see. You learn that from Dancing with Wolves. I mean, it doesn't work out.
It's be a town party, not a block party. Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, $463. Don't spend it all on one thing unless it's going to draw people in.
Mhm.
All right. So we talked about mascots earlier.
Yes.
We talked about injuries, but there was the Atlanta Braves mascot. I
Yeah.
don't remember his name. Doesn't matter. So there's every preseason, I do believe they have mascots take on what I assume is a junior high football team in a scrimmage.
Mm-hmm.
Because you try it out to be basically one of, I don't know if you call it the mascot or what it would be for the Vikings.
I competed with Ragnar back in like 1993 or
So
something
let's say you in fact
won it. Yeah.
And you were like the mascot.
Mm-hmm.
And you were taking on 8th graders that were fully padded. How hard are you going at these kids?
Not very.
Okay, because the Atlanta Braves mascot stiff-armed like 5 kids to the ground as hard as he could.
So he went Bill Murray and what was that movie called? Rushmore, I think it was. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not refresh me.
He was blocking shots as these kids on the playground trying to hit.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I mean,
he was like totally Akeem Olajuwon him, or Dikembe Mutombo.
No,
it was Dikembe Mutombo.
Yes. Okay, I'll have to look that. I'm not familiar with that. I didn't see her.
It wasn't a very good movie, but some people loved it. But yeah, that's what he pulled.
Okay, yeah. So
it was like the only good scene in the movie, in my opinion.
It's funny because, I mean, I have the utmost respect for mascots. I think it's a difficult job to entertain,
especially in Atlanta in the summer.
Yes, I know. You're probably is it Mercedes-Benz Stadium or is that?
There's a Mercedes-Benz Superdome, and then there's Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Okay,
between two arch rivals.
Now you understand why I was confused for a moment.
Right.
Now imagine you are. Yes. Okay. Now you're able to watch. I mean, boom.
Yeah.
This is great radio in which we're watching a video.
He is really trucking these kids. Wow. I mean, that is Earl Campbell stiff arming. Oh yeah, that's rough.
But the thing is, if I'm one of those kids playing, I'm probably enjoying.
I'm loving it.
I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to go after it because it's a fully grown man,
right?
And he's probably having the time of his life.
Yeah. It's that was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That's something right out of the movies. Like you couldn't make it up. That's like something Adam Sandler would write for The Waterboy.
Yes.
Because you wouldn't really believe that would happen in real life.
But it
all
did.
would do this.
And we'll have to watch these on the breaks because now all of a sudden Eric's just showing us a bunch of clips.
Oh yeah,
this guy
he's full-fledged playing on defense, tackling them. Oh my goodness. So like the other mascots are looking at him like, dude, what's your problem?
And you're saying that.
Yeah, and now he's doing like
he's taunting.
DegenerX, type of, like WWE type of trash talking.
If an NFL game was actually going on, he would get penalized for taunting right there.
Yeah, that's.
So my question is, you beat out Ragnar. You are the mascot for the Vikings. You took it from him in the 90s. You're not going to go all out if you're
Probably not.
kids.
Well, because at that position, you actually had to show your face. Because what they wanted to do, and you remember seeing like old NFL films of the old Vikings mascot that would stand at Metropolitan Stadium? His name was Hub Meads. So they wanted to have like a Hub Meads type of mascot again. So I went in there and I didn't have enough facial hair or whatever. And Ragnar kind of fit the part. And he was a custodian or something at school. So like all these kids were there to cheer him on.
Oh, it was rigged against
So
you.
it was at the Mall of America when I was like 4 years old. So it was that was still a really big deal. And it was really
Was it
a
at
fun
Camp
event.
Snoopy?
No, it was in the Rotunda.
Okay.
And they had a draft party. It was a draft party before. That was the draft party where the guy from the Colts told, who the heck is Mel Kiper anyway? Because I was watching and Joe Sensor was sitting there with me laughing. And so I remember that day quite well. But no, so it was a little different type of mascot. Like Victor the Viking is the one now.
Okay, sure.
He's got the full, it's like Hawkeye or
What are those
Thunder.
suits made out of?
I don't know, but they're heavy. Well, we got one for Froggy here.
I know.
And it
And
gets
you'll
warm.
never see me in that thing.
Well, it's, and hats off to the folks here who actually do that and are good sports to do that
especially
type of
like
thing.
during the fair when it's 90 degrees on pavement.
Well, yeah, or the street fair.
What was your selling point? I want to know. Audition for me.
It wasn't good. Well, I was still kind of too cool for school. I just don't, I didn't look that great doing it. But
what was your type? Paint the picture. What'd you wear?
I was kind of more like what I wanted to do more. Do you remember the cat that was Crazy George? You ever see that guy? That's something. And a lot of listeners he was a guy and he had like a drum. And he'd bang on it, and he would get the wave going and stuff. He was with the Houston Oilers, and the Vikings hired him away. He'd get the crowd going. That's kind of what more I wanted to do because I was much younger. I thought
not make it about you.
No, well, I would make it about me for sure if I could. Trust me. How would I come up with some type of name? I had the name. I was, but
you don't want to share it because there still might be a future.
That's a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
This is like the first email address that you had. You don't want to tell other people
right.
about
That's a good point.
You hope you don't put that on a resume.
Exactly.
Okay.
No, it was. Well, part of the reason is because I would go to Vikings games, and it was a pretty stale environment in like '93. It wasn't until Randy Moss came on board in 1998 where they were selling out games. They had a thing called the General Mills Fund, and they would buy out the non-sold tickets so the games won't get blacked out. And then that money ran out. For a couple of years, games were actually blacked out in the Twin Cities. So people are like driving to St. Cloud. I mean, how stupid is this? You had how many millions of people that live down there go buy a ticket, which was pretty affordable.
I would imagine.
I had season tickets for a while because someone afford it as even a young professional, and now you can't. You got C licensing and that whole deal. But so these people actually drive to Mankato or St. Cloud to watch in a sports bar. By the time you got done eating and drinking and driving down there, why don't you go just get a ticket if you live in Burnsville to go up there? I never understood that whatsoever. But
are you questioning the intelligence of Vikings fans?
My frustration has always been
that was a big prize, man.
Well, like I said, in that time, the crowds were pretty lame. I mean, and they wouldn't dress, and it wasn't until Moss changed everything. He really did. That 15-1 season changed everything. It was just a different, stale environment there, and so that's what I was looking to do. And you didn't have to do it after that because it
turned around.
They've sold out every game since that year.
Right place, right time for Ragnar with his rigged election with his kids coming.
Well, then the goofball decides to try to go way too high on what he wanted to do because I want to say the offer was $75 a game and to get in, and that was it. And as a kid, I'll drive down there for $75 a game. Who cares? And get in the Vikings game.
Yeah, you get to feel the energy.
Right,
of the crowd.
exactly. He had the Harley. He fit the part for a while. There's no question.
You do not have Couch Potato Radio
I do
until
not.
Thursday because you got UND Coaches Show coming
Tonight.
back. And then Twins baseball. Twins again early tomorrow after the drive time news. So we'll check in with you later on, all right?
Sounds good, man.
All right. Appreciate it. Derek Hansen, host of that Couch Potato Radio. You can catch him here on KFGO. Got to get you some of these messages. We'll see what's coming up on the drive time news. Jack Sunday, 5 until 5:30. We'll see what's coming up in the next half hour right here on KFGO. Of UND QB and coaches show gets underway because football's back. They're going to be in Nebraska. That's at 5:30. Between now and 5:30, Jack Sunday's got the drive time news.
Who's going to be in Nebraska?
UND.
UND's playing.
Yeah, that Nebraska.
That Nebraska.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yeah. 2:30 kickoff.
I have missed so much stuff. I can't believe it.
Yeah, in Lincoln, Nebraska. I'd be hearing Jack Michaels, the voice of Fighting Hawks football down there.
Wow, that's great. Coming up on the Drive Time News Hour, I'll be hosting only a half hour today at 5 o'clock, CBS News. We have Tom Szymanski, followed by Paul Juergens with KFGO News, and Paulie Lines with our traffic update. We'll have sports with Derek Hansen, and Peter King from CBS News is going to talk to us about the scrub of the SLS, and which is that new rocket that's going to deliver people to Mars and back, hopefully. We'll get the skinny on that. Good. I'm excited about it. Rusty Halverson has some ag news. Joel Heitkamp has another ride, and then we're going to have the UND Coaches Show in Nebraska. How did I miss that? Where have I been? I listen to the radio all the time.
I'm busy, man. It's a busy time, but that gets back underway. You know, that launch being scrubbed, I'll be curious because they're saying, it was like an engine issue. I mean, that's a pretty serious thing.
Yeah, well, that's why they scrubbed
it. I
it.
know, and they're like, well, hopefully it's something we could fix on the launch pad. I wonder how big of a delay it is if they got to move that.
Well, I don't want to give it all away.
Oh, yeah, of course
But I
not.
understand it could be weeks or it could be Friday.
Well, I'll be listening for more.
Yeah. So, of course, that wasn't Peter King that told me that.
No.
And I want to ask him, the Saturn rockets got us to the moon.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we have to have a new one?
Well, be curious to learn more.
It'll be potentially 4 people flying to the moon next time.
Not something I would want to do, but that's just me. Listen to me, full of complaints at the end of the show today. 2:30 is too late for a kickoff for college football. We'll continue that conversation and much more tomorrow. That means this is it for me today. I'm Tyler Axtis. You take care of yourself. I'll check in tomorrow right here on KFGO.